Kia ora, and welcome to Constellations and All That. I'm your host, Tracy Cartwright, and together we will be exploring the world of family constellations with facilitators and clients from around the world, looking at different perspectives and experiences in the work, having a cup of tea and just chatting with some friends around their experiences in constellations. We'd love for you to join us. I hope that you enjoy this series as much as I have loved making it. Kia ora, everyone. Welcome to Constellations and All That. Today, I have the utmost pleasure, this has been a long time coming, of having Tanja Meyburgh as my guest. Welcome, Tanja.
Thank you so much, Tracy.
Now, I just want to ask, is it Tanya or Tanya, or because you've got a J in your name?
So the way we say it in South Africa is Tanya,
Tanya.
but I'm used to many different iterations with different accents. But yes, we just say Tanya.
Oh, good. I forgot to ask you before we started, so yeah, welcome. I'd love for you to share a little bit about yourself for the listeners and the viewers. I'm pretty sure most people would probably know who you are, but you never know.
Well, I guess I have been in this work for quite a while. I did my first training in 2002 already, at what was called then CIST in Germany, which later became Bernried and Kochel. So I've been going at it for a very long time, and I live in South Africa. I live in Cape Town. And most of the time that I've been working with constellations has really been pioneering in South
Mm.
Africa. There was very few people who knew what it was when I started here. And so working in a multicultural context, working in a post-colonial, post-apartheid context has really shaped a lot of my work. And one of the big things that I also spent a long time doing, because there was no recognition of the knowledge lineage root of constellation work that originated in South Africa. I mean, not constellation work originated, but it's one of the roots. And that wasn't really seen enough in my opinion when I started. So that's been a big piece is trying to have that acknowledged and show that there is a considerable amount of knowledge that Bert Hellinger has integrated into the method
Mm.
from South Africa.
Is this the knowledge from the Zulu or South Africa or more?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think, well, particularly from the Zulu. I mean, he was here to minister to the Zulu people in KwaZulu-Natal. So he lived amongst them for 16 years as a missionary.
Mm, mm.
And I just think, to live somewhere in a country for 16 years, there's so many influences that infiltrate, never mind the fact that you're working with people's spirituality and with the way that they engage with the world on so many levels when you're ministering to somebody. So, there's a lot of knowledge that shows through. But more recently, my own work has developed as well, and I'm not just a constellator. I also do movement, and I'm a psychotherapist,
Mm.
mostly working with supervision and advanced training. So really, really interested in the body and embodiment, and also with land as a subject that came up a lot in my own
Yeah.
self-reflection as a facilitator. So yeah, I think that's a bit of a summary of who I am and what I do. But maybe more will come
Wonderful.
as we chat.
Yeah, that's great. How did you personally, how did you come to constellations, or how did constellations come to you?
So I was really lucky because somebody who knows me very well, that I'd done a art therapy training with, suggested that I come along to something that was happening in her therapist's living room. And
Mm.
what it was Dr. Ursula Franke doing a demonstration about constellations in Cape Town while she was here on holiday. And we sat in the room and she asked who would like to do a constellation. I didn't even know what it was. I didn't know why I was there. I just trusted the person who said I should go. And nobody put their hand up. And I'm just one of those people who's like, "Ah, why not? I'll just put my hand up." And what followed was just an incredibly powerful experience for myself, which made me understand things about myself, my mom, my dad, my whole family system that just made a lot of things click into place. And I think that experience was so powerful that I knew then and there why I'd been referred to this work. And I went straight to go and study in it. There is a
Sounds a bit
little
like
bit of a
me.
backstory. Yeah, I mean, it was really a powerful experience. The backstory is that I had been told a couple of times that I have an ancestral calling, and I couldn't quite work out how to follow that. And when I experienced the constellation, it was very clear that this was something that
Yeah.
made a lot of sense to me.
Oh, wonderful. And so, as you shared earlier, you're one of the pioneers in helping to establish constellations in South Africa. Boy, that must have been quite a feat.
I look back at it now, and when some of my students complain about how difficult it is to share the work, I think you have no idea.
Mm,
I try and stay empathetic, but really in those days, nobody knew what it was. Every single person that I met, I had to explain from scratch what was happening.
yeah,
Um, it was, I liken it to like, chopping through a jungle in a way. There's no path yet, there's nothing. And you've just got to like kind of go around every obstacle. And it was a lot of, speaking to groups who knew nothing about it and learning just by trying. And in the end, of course, what I realized was the best things are to do it rather than to talk about it. So demonstrations and also word of mouth. I mean, that's really the powerful way to spread things. And the other thing that was interesting for me to encounter in South Africa was the fact that there's already many ancestral traditions here. And so what I was bringing, I had to be really mindful how I was bringing it because this is a work that was developed by a German psychotherapist or Bert Hellinger. And I was bringing it back into a place where there's already active ancestral traditions. So there was some wariness and some difficulties for people to sort of wonder what is this? Like it's come from the West. Is it
yeah.
trustworthy?
And also, as you say, there was the undercurrent or the stuff that was received, the information, the memories that were brought through from with Bert that he had also received while he was in South Africa. So it's kind of like this going out and coming back in and finding a way to make it land, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we, you could really see how, like in many places in the Western world, anything to do with ancestors was demonized by the church. And so
Mm.
there was a lot of there were a lot of people who were sort of asking whether you can do this if you're a Christian, and how does that go together? Because many of the churches said you couldn't practice your ancestral traditions. So I met a lot of skepticism and
Yeah.
concern about how this could fit within one's spiritual belief system. Like, is it really a psychology or is it a spiritual thing, or where does it fit? Which wasn't always so easy for me because I come from a psychology background. So
Mm.
I can speak all the languages in a way.
So how do you describe it? Or how's that changed from when you first started to now? How do you describe it?
I think the difference is that when I first started, I would try and describe the method.
Mm,
And that just confused people. They just couldn't picture it and couldn't understand it. And now what I do is I try to speak more to what kind of difficulties could one be experiencing because of an ancestral entanglement or a transgenerational trauma, and how that might show up, and how that might find some kind of resolution through looking at it and seeing it, and acknowledging it. So
I
it's
love that.
more about
Yeah,
what's the problem, and yeah, and
yeah,
and 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 what can you get out of it rather than the method. And that makes so much sense for me because actually no therapists really explain their method. That you just go to a therapist and they might use whatever method. You don't often know what method they are using.
yeah. And that kind of tie what you were saying before about you would give examples, but at the beginning you were trying to talk about it, and then when you're sharing now about how you describe it, it's the same thing, isn't it? Giving an example of how it might help rather than trying to discuss or share the process,
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
underlying.
So in those days, everything that I learned from the first generation teachers, we learned by doing constellations in a big circle, and there weren't that many mini constellations or sort of more training structures that have been developed over the years.
Mm.
And what I would do now is not necessarily do a whole big constellation, but do something in a way that many people have an experience by doing a small movements of the soul or a mini constellation. Um, so that again, it's the experience that introduces people to the work and really lets them see that the power that's there rather than trying to access it through the mind.
What excites me about that too is I find that I don't know if you find this, but I find that often people go, "Oh, this makes sense. This makes sense to how I've been sort of like living quietly, closetly." The work allows them to maybe be seen a little bit more as,
Absolutely, yeah. There's a recognition for many
yeah,
people, or a sense of, oh, okay, like I can feel that this makes sense, even if it doesn't really make sense.
yeah. Tell me a little bit about the embodiment, because I know that I've seen that you infuse that a little bit in your work too, don't you?
Yeah, more and more these days, as I move into more advanced training, I feel like I can integrate more of who I am as a therapist, and in the basic work, training. It's quite important that people experience constellations in its pure form. But I'm actually trained in many different things, and one of them is conscious dance. Obviously, when I was working with constellations, or actually as a general, in the international field, realized that deeper embodiment would be helpful for the work. I mean, it was the early trainers who started reflecting on things like re-traumatization or difficulties that were being experienced by clients. And now, actually, we see a lot more embodiment in constellation work than I saw 25 years ago. Um, and, that a lot of people went and studied somatic experiencing or other types of body therapy. And I started early on, actually, also looking into that and seeing what to use. And I wrote my master's thesis on it. And I never. I never quite resonated fully with somatic experiencing just in my own process. I had a number of sessions myself,
Yeah.
whereas the dance took me to places that I wasn't able to go in other ways. And so I think just deepening the embodiment through understanding the body, understanding trance states, understanding how to get somebody to increase their interoception and increase their proprioception, um, actually also helps people become better representatives. Or when I say better representatives that are more in contact with their own body and what's happening in space, because
Mm.
it's actually a skill that you can develop and a
Yeah.
muscle that you can build. So now I actually integrate the movement into the constellation work and do some moving constellations, some rituals where we move and constellate, and it's become a full integration. I don't do it all the time, but it's one of the things that I offer, and it's
Right, I was
really
going to
powerful.
ask you that. How would you do that? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things is it's a great warm up to doing constellation work. So getting people really like comfortable and in their bodies and kind of sensing and able to kind of orientate themselves in space, which
Mm.
makes them more sensitive representatives. But also, one of the things about constellation work that troubled me for many years was that the integration needed to always happen after people had left the workshop, because we were always advised not to speak about the constellation. And what we can do with the movement and with the embodiment is that we can do some integration without speaking about the constellation. And so when people leave, there's already an integration process happening.
Oh,
And I
lovely.
just found that really creates an incredibly powerful container that allows us to go very deep in the work. Not that we don't go deep normally, but
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I was just
yeah.
thinking, is there a way to give me an example or to give the listeners an example in our mind's eye? How that would.
What I was trained to work with is called a shamanic wave, which is a way of working with a playlist and with instruction while people are moving to help them to
Mm.
enter into a kind of an embodied trance. So it's not a transcendent state like we're going out of ourselves to go and find something. We're going deeper in to see what's moving and what's happening there. And because our ancestors and our experiences and everything is remembered by our body and is kind of present in our epigenes, a lot of things can be accessed in movement that are not possible to, and as we know, also as representatives, that are not possible to access in other ways, just by remembering or by telling the story. And so, and so on the one hand, it's a deepening relationship with the vehicle that we use in the knowing field. So this body, when it steps into the knowing field, once it's had a chance to experience multiple waves. I mean, it is something that you build. So maybe I should finish what I was saying about the waves. So basically, it takes you into an altered state, but more so in your body and raises your heartbeat and allows you to release on a somatic level things that you've been holding on to. And it also allows kind of things to enter then after you've released. And so it can be really useful, for example, at the end of a workshop when people have been sitting all day and they've been absorbing a lot to go through that kind of wave where a lot of things can be released, things that they may be holding, things that have come up in their own story. And it's not necessary to understand what you're releasing. Your body just does it.
I love that.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it's difficult. It's again another thing that's difficult to explain until you've experienced it. But I think for me, what's been really helpful as a facilitator is that I find it excruciating to sit still for a whole day, and it makes me very difficult to attend workshops because I need to move. And I found that there are a lot of people like that find the sitting through the whole day quite difficult. And and so the movement brings a kind of a release, but it also brings a lightness. And we know that sometimes constellation work can go very deep and feel a little bit heavy for some people. And so, in a way, I feel like the movement also makes a space for neurodiversity and for inclusion of people who perhaps don't understand the language so well. So, in a multicultural setting, in an international setting, it's been really useful to just create another form of communication and expression.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. My dog's doing a little dance behind us as we're talking. I don't know if you can hear it. She's going around and round and round.
Sweet.
Um, I just want to share this for the listeners and the viewers too. This is an amazing book. Your book, Reclaiming Ancestors, Modern Path to Ancient Ways, Reclaiming Ancestors. If you haven't seen it or read it, peeps, please get your hands on a copy. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about this for those. I took this with me. I remember sending you a picture. I'm trying to get it into view here. It's because I'm blurry. Oh, there we go. I was on a boat in Vietnam cruising around the harbour, and I sent you a picture.
I loved seeing that picture. It was
Yeah.
beautiful. I think the book has traveled quite a lot into different places. It's been such a gift to see people sending pictures of the book all over the world. Yeah, so I knew I had to write a book for a long time, and a lot of my colleagues and teachers were encouraging me, but I just didn't know what to write. And so getting some mentoring in that, the suggestion was really to start with your own experience, to start with your own story. And so, it's quite exposing. There's quite a lot of personal stuff in the book. So it's not just a manual on how to do constellation work. It's more about a journey of reclaiming ancestors. And for me, reclaiming ancestors means reclaiming the people from our lineages that have been forgotten and excluded, but it also means reclaiming things that have been forcibly taken away. So things like land and spirituality. And so I go into the book, it's really in the end about my path as a Western woman trying to find my way through an ancestral calling into an African tradition and the reflection of that. How do I do that without, appropriating and sort of doing something that's not mine to do? And I resisted it for 15 years, but eventually I did it. And so I had like the longest training in the history, I think, of anyone who did that path, as I was questioning. But all that questioning was really helpful because I realized that it's so much bigger than just us. There's so many systems that have at play that have looked to disempower us and to separate us from things that give us health and give us strength and give us vitality. And that's what I talk about in the book. Like, what are those things, and how did those things happen? I also speak about how I think Hellinger's work, like the fact of how much was taken. Well, I don't want to say taken. How much was received in South Africa. That wasn't so deeply acknowledged. Like, why was that? And so I speak a little bit to that. But ultimately, it's about how you can reclaim a relationship with your ancestors. So that's not only based in what were their traumas and what were their entanglements, but also what's the beauty, what's the joy, how can I develop a relationship? And I think that for me was the difference between constellation work and the traditional African lineage that I'm trained in, is that in that lineage, we spend a lot of time developing a relationship with ancestors and developing a communication with ancestors in a way that is supportive and guiding and puts us in a position where we have them as our elders. And it's not only when we're in a constellation workshop that we're connecting to them, we actually have a possibility to develop that relationship really rich and deep. That also, as facilitators, supports our work. It's not only for facilitators, the book. I've had a lot of lay people read it, and they also enjoyed reading it. So the idea was to kind of make it quite wide and see, who would resonate. And I think it speaks to different, from the beginner to the advanced. My wish really is that people have an opportunity to connect to the beauty of their ancestors as well, and to find that path alongside their constellation work.
That's fantastic. When you were talking, I kept getting, and I mean, I've never met your daughter, but I kept getting images of your daughter. So I think the question I would like to ask would be something, how do I phrase this? How has this pathway influenced the way you parent?
Great question. I think what's been very useful for me, because when I first started, I was quite, what's the word? When you learn something for the first time, it becomes kind of a little bit, maybe one gets a little dogmatic. I'm not sure how to say it without the word dogma, is a little bit too strong. But I remember when my children were young, I would say things like, I'm the big one, I'm the mommy, and you're the baby. And that came back to bite me so badly when my kids were teenagers, because now my son stands next to me and he's a head taller, and Leila's the same size as me now at 14, and and Aiden says, "We're the big ones now, mommy, and you're the little one." So yeah, there's that. But really, as a parent, I think the difficult thing has been that there's a kind of an ideal that might be created in a constellation. Like, this is what kind of an ideal family looks like, which I don't think was what was intended in the work. And I'm not an ideal family. We are a very broken family, actually. We don't have any contact with the children's father, and I'm a divorced. And, a lot of my students were deeply disappointed in me because of these things. So life happens, even if you know a lot and you try and put everything into practice. And so, to take the pressure off, and the expectations that people have of you as a leader in the work, to
You're
kind of be
also
perfect.
human too, aren't you?
We're
You
human and
start
we
with things.
also make bad choices and mistakes and things happen in ways that we don't want them to happen. But I think one of the biggest things that this work has given me is an understanding of those that are marginalized and those that are different. And my children are edge walkers as well.
Yeah.
And so they encounter the world in ways that are not always easy. As Lela's definitely, and she came edge walking between life and death. And I think just knowing that there is the ancestral support has been helpful for me
Yeah.
as a parent.
It's an
But I
interesting
also,
terminology, isn't it? Edge walker. It's good to know. I
yes,
like it. I don't think I've heard that used too often. It's a good, yeah. Sorry for interrupting you.
no, I think edge walking is something that some of us facilitators are edge walkers. We're working in the realm of the edge between life and death when we're working with ancestors. And so many facilitators come with special qualities of pattern recognition and able to do things or learn to do things that perhaps mainstream therapists don't. I don't know what
Yeah.
I'm saying. Maybe this is a bit.
No, no, no. Because for
Mm,
me, and you shared it too, it was like you knew that there was the ancestral work that you were going to do, but like it had been mentioned, but you didn't know what that was going to be. And for me, constellations allowed the parts of me, I guess Edge Walker would be a really good description of myself without having known that. So it really gave it, I found like I found a place
yes.
for myself to bring through what the gifts that I had without being feeling so crazy or on the edge or um, out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess
Oh,
to some
well,
that's I still do look a little bit like that, but that's okay.
look, I think from my observations, and it'd be interesting if somebody did a proper research study on this. A lot of the trainers that I interviewed, the first generation trainers for Real
Mm,
Academy, they often said that they were ADHD, and I'm ADHD, and my kids are as well. And I think that there are quite a high number of neurodiverse people that are attracted into this work because it helps you see things and experience things that that may not be so easy
mm,
if you have certain social skills that are different or work in your brain works in a different way. And so that kind of relational field and being able to step into roles. So I do see quite a lot of neurodiversity attracted into constellation work. And I think it's
mm.
wonderful that it also gives a place. And it makes it nice and spicy in our community, which I enjoy. And so those, I would say neurodiversity is also kind of an edge walking.
Yeah.
Because there's something a way of seeing the world that may not be neurotypical, and I think it's exciting. I love it. I mean, I
Yeah.
experience it. Yeah,
Yeah. To help me to accept those parts of myself that I'd been rejecting as well. So one of the but one of the gifts of the work. One of the gifts.
yeah, definitely. And there's one more thing I wanted to say about the parenting, because I think I'm fumbling around this question a little bit interestingly.
That's all right.
And that is that a lot of people come to constellations and they say, I want to work out all my stuff so that I don't pass anything on to my children. And I just want to say that, like, it's such a beautiful ideal and it's such an incredible wish and it comes with so much love. But
Mm.
actually, it's not real. It's not possible. We can do as much work as we want, but our children, we will still pass things on to our children. And that's not doesn't mean that we failed. It's part of them belonging to the system that they belong to, and so there's no amount of work that you can do that you'll magically release your children to a life that is it's completely easy and
Exactly. We all have our life path, right? We all have our lessons, our destinies, and things that,
absolutely,
things that are there
yeah,
for us to learn.
yeah,
I think there is a certain amount that you would, you're doing your own work that's going to clear if the children are entangled in it. But yeah. to come with the ideal that you're going to fix everything so there's nothing left for your children.
Yeah, it's a kind of a magical thinking, I suppose, as well. And, something
Yeah.
that every parent would love to be able to wipe the slate clean, but yeah, I mean, the reality is different.
Exactly, exactly. You mentioned Real Academy just before, and I've been a follower of Real Academy for a very long time. Would you like to share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so it started just before COVID, actually. So we were so excited that it was a possibility that was available in COVID about a year before Eric Anderson and I decided to come together and put a digital resource together because we saw that the first generation elders of this work were starting to age, and we didn't want those voices to be lost.
Yeah.
And so I started interviewing a lot of my teachers and the people that were part of the really beginning. And one of them was Hunter Beaumont,
Yeah.
who was a really, important person in the development of this work and making it accessible by writing Love's Hidden Symmetry, which is just a really incredible book. And so that's what we did. We sort of looked at it as a way to make it possible for people to supplement their knowledge, to get further learning, to hear from these elders, to have a sense of the quality of these things. And that was before online work was happening so much. So we kind of started and I thought, wow, this is going to be amazing. But then a lot of people have had access to those elders online. But I do think that it's a kind of a resource that lives on. And at the moment, I'm not creating a lot more content, but what's happening is that, for example, Barbara Morgan of the Knowing Field has asked us to keep the archive of the Knowing Field, which is an incredible amount of work that was done over
Amazing.
many,
Yeah.
many years. And it's now accessible and it's easy to get, and it can be accessed digitally, and that's again another way of preserving some of those voices and making sure that those things don't, as people retire or pass over, that we don't lose these incredible resources. So yeah, so I'm hoping that with time we can get as much of the content that is supportive of this work and the roots of this work loaded up there so people can access it. So it's at realacademy.net. And
That's
it's
a
not it's a
valuable
business.
resource. Yeah.
It's more like a library.
Yeah.
Call it that, yeah. You do have to pay for some of the content. There's quite a bit that's free, but obviously we have to cover some expenses with all that video content that sits behind the website. It's quite a
Oh, and the
big.
marketing, all of it, the website, all of those things. Um,
Mm,
there's a lot that goes in that people don't see, isn't there? There's
yeah.
a lot of time and a lot of love and energy that's in there. And you have those beautiful little dollies you call them,
Yes.
don't you, behind you?
We call them the African Constellation dollies. So this is a project I started 15 years ago or something with a colleague. And they're basic little constellation dollies. And, we checked in with all the elders. Guni Bagza and Ursula Franco were two people who we modeled. We asked them to test them and to tell us what they thought of them. And they are made by a group of women here in Cape Town. And as we get more and more orders, we train more and more women, and it's kind of an empowerment project. The idea is that, especially women with very small children, they're really
Yeah.
happy to be able to make some income in this way, and incredible crafts and skills. You can see how beautifully they're made. That when they can't work because their babies are small, and so this is
It's a great
yeah.
idea. So what do they get in the pack? Like, are there different packs or are there?
At the moment, we sell them in a set of 12. There's four grandparents, four adults, and four children. So the children are a little bit smaller. And it comes in a beautiful shwe shwe bag, which is a African material. And you can buy them, different people want different kind of skin colors because of where they work. We're
Yeah.
mostly selling mixed sets at the moment, which would be like this with two two different skin colors, but
Yeah.
you can also buy, if you're working a lot with African American community or wherever you're working. So yeah, people and obviously this is something you don't come across very often. I mean, you do
No.
more now, but when we started these dollies, to find a dolly with a black skin was really difficult.
Yeah.
And so we've got a lot of clients who work with multiracial communities who love these dollies, and they're really nicely made. Once you buy a set, it lasts forever, basically. So thanks for punting
Fantastic.
them. Well, I've just punted them.
I think that's so cute.
I do love them. I
I
do
remember
love
you
them.
showing me them in Australia. I think they were coming through. Maybe you were just starting, or you. I think you brought a set over with you when we met at the intensive a number of years ago, quite a few years ago now, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean the best thing is if you get a group of people together and you get them sent over together because then the postage is not so much.
Yeah, because international postage is a killer, really.
Yeah.
It's what, mind you, all postage is at the moment. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. What else does the field want me to ask? Have you got anything else that you would like to share about the work, or that's just sitting there for you?
Oh, nothing comes to mind at the moment. I'm sorry, my brain is a
That's
little bit.
okay. I know that you're a trainer, you're a teacher and a trainer of the work. Whereabouts in the world is that for anyone that's in South Africa? What? Because it's a big place.
Yeah, so I've actually stopped training basic training facilitators last year. I did my 24th group of a 2-year
Wow.
training and I decided I'm going to have a break. And so there's a number of my students now who've started trainings. I think there's about 8 or 9 of them now in South Africa that are training. But what I do is I come in and do advanced training. I do supervision of facilitators and trainers online and in person. And what I've been enjoying with the book, just giving the book a chance by taking it around the world is,
Mm.
I train in other people's trainings. So I'm involved in quite a few different institutes around the world, working either with their trainers or with their facilitators, and doing master classes. So that's what I'm enjoying at the moment is that next layer, like
Yeah.
how do we include more embodiment in our practice, or how do we work safely with ancestors in our practice, or whatever question is coming out of a certain community for me to go and
Mm.
meet that. um
Yeah. You mentioned the land earlier. How does that, because I work with the land as well, but just wondering how does that work and for you in the constellations? How do you bring that in?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I mean, first of all, I work a little differently to a lot of people. Originally, land constellations kind of sat within nature constellation. But for me, a lot of reflection of being a South African, being a white South African, living in an area that used to be inhabited by indigenous people, and now, I own this land, and reflecting on that was where my work started emerging with land, and asking myself, who lived here before me?
Yeah.
What was the price that they had to pay for me to be here? And also, I mean, land is a hot topic in South Africa. It's a question on how do reparations happen when the loss of the land or the stealing of the land happened so long ago. So I started to include it more and more, and for one, in indigenous ceremonies. I mean, I know that from Australia, which I hadn't experienced anywhere else in the world, is that the people of the first people of the land where you're working are acknowledged and spoken about in the beginning of a ceremony. And that is something that I've started to include in my work, and that is kind of becoming standard practice in working in South Africa, is really who was here first,
Yeah.
who were the indigenous people of the land, and having a small ceremony at the beginning of every workshop or gathering of people. And then, I looked at ways that can be done with constellations. How can we work with collective constellations? So I started mostly with collective constellations around land. and the voices of the land and the voices of the people, because in the indigenous lineage that I'm trained in, one of the group of ancestors that we work with is the ancestors of the soil. We don't only work with family ancestors, we also work with who was
Ooh.
here first and who was here before them. So we have ancestors in the land as well. And how do we acknowledge them and give place to them? So I started working with constellation work as a way of acknowledging those ancestors of the soil, and also helping people in a group to find a unique position around this, because many people haven't even thought about it. So a
Yeah.
lot of it was around consciousness raising and just acknowledging and awareness. And with time, with a colleague, Sue Davidhoff, and I, we've developed through conversation many layers and more small exercises and ways of looking at different lands of our ancestors, lands where we are connected to through perpetration, different kinds of relationships to land. And it's
Yeah.
actually been so important, especially now with all the immigration difficulties and people becoming aware how important it is really for so many people around the world. And that just the awareness, especially like, for example, I work a lot in the Netherlands,
Oh,
and I'm interested in working with the Netherlands because they were the people who came to South Africa and colonized here. And so
the Dutch were the first, were
looking,
they?
the Dutch were the first. I mean, they didn't start as a colony, but they started, just with a refreshment station. But then came the English. But the
So,
Dutch were the first that settled in. And so, yeah, just if you look at somebody who's lived in a place their whole life, their ancestors have lived in the same place, they've benefited from all the things of that place. It's a very different reality to somebody who's had to move from country to country to country to feel safe. And it's a huge part of their identity. And when one misses that as a constellation facilitator, how important that is. So when I work with immigrants, it bringing in the land is essential. It just opens the constellation up completely because it's such an essential piece of identity
bringing
in an
in
immigrant.
their land, their homeland, or the land that you're on now. Sorry, I
Both,
both. Yeah.
both.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it depends
Beautiful.
on the question, but I usually bring in both because it's a different relationship. So, there's the land of your birth, which you have a very special connection to. Then there's the lands where your parents come from and your ancestors come from. They're the lands where you've moved to or you're living at. And then, as I said, like with the Dutch, South Africa, Dutch people love South Africa. They love coming to South Africa. They're totally connected, but they often don't realize that the reason why is because there's a fate of the Dutch with
Mm.
South Africa, and there's something there that needs to be acknowledged and seen, and that actually triggers people in South Africa when Dutch people come and they just go, oh, I just love it here. It's so beautiful. Love the animals. Love Africa. So creating awareness around these things that we do that's yeah are unconscious or
They are unconscious, aren't they? Yeah. And I think that they're so important to be aware of.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
And I mean,
brilliant.
there's also a primal bond that we have with the land,
Yeah.
so there's the socio-political and then there's the primal and the deeper kind of bonds. And traditionally in nature constellations, we've worked with the deeper primal bonds and less with the socio-political. But for me, the socio-political layer is such a big, important layer when you're working with a multicultural group or a group, especially in a land of people who have been colonized, because that is
Yeah.
such a huge part of their story and their identity. Yeah. Mm.
Welcome to Aotearoa.
Yes, yes, I
I
think,
don't think there's too many places that wouldn't have some of that in the world, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. It's
Yeah, and
fascinating.
I think it's also part of like collective work. The family work is so important and the work with our parents is so important, but there is something in the field and the world today that's asking us to not only look at the individual level, but to really start to to awaken ourselves also to collective movements and how what's happening individually and personally can also be like a fractal of something that's happening collectively. And
That's right.
so, I try and work both at the closer, the internal inner layers of the client, but also within something bigger, that it isn't always like a shock to see the news or that when you're working with the shadow aspect of yourself and you're also looking at the shadow aspect of a more cultural or societal level, that there's a kind of integration that allows you to be with what's happening and also not dissolve and fall to pieces and have to look away, but that you can actually show up also for larger systems and larger conversation because
Yeah.
you've developed a kind of a robustness for that.
Yeah. I think constellations definitely helps you to work
Mm,
that muscle. And just thinking about we are all one in the context of I am you and you are me.
yeah.
And often in our individualism, in the way that the society teaches us that you know you're an individual and it's you're just this, but actually there's so much more, so much
Mm,
more. That's what I love about working in this field work and what you've just
mm,
been sharing. So
mm.
thank you. That's amazing.
I
So
love
much.
what you're saying because it's like expansive. It creates an expansiveness. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes I wake up and I'm like aware that I'm really sad and I'm not aware of any
Mm,
dreams that I've had or anything like that. And then I try not to watch the news too much because it's, you know, but then I find out that there's been something major that's happened in the world and it's like, oh,
mm,
okay. So it's there in the collective already and I'm feeling it without knowing it, consciously knowing it. So, yeah, because it's out there, right? We're only just a little tiny drop in the ocean of life. Mm, love it. Love it.
absolutely. And that illusion that, we're the masters of our universe and we're fully in control of everything is kind of as an individual I it's an illusion. I mean, of course, we want to develop a certain level of an integrated self that is part of the work that we're doing, but it doesn't exist in isolation from everything else. And I love the example you've
Yeah,
given.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good balance, right? Good. Find that balance in there, I think is probably
Mhm.
one of the keys if you're looking for the secret of life. Is one of the keys, one of the doors.
Yes.
Oh, brilliant. So
Yes.
if someone wants to get in touch with you, how would they find you?
So I've got my website, which is tanjameyburgh.com, and the spelling I think you'll get from the podcast. And then social media. I mean, I have accounts on Instagram, on Facebook, and it's not personal. You're welcome to join up and see what's happening. I mean, I post a mixture between sort of ponderings and what's happening when I'm traveling and, things that are upcoming. It's not like one of those somebody else manages my account. It's very much my voice and
Yeah.
so if you want to engage, that is one way to do it. And yeah, I'm just really I love the work, and obviously I've been kind of focused on it for so long, 25 years now. I'm always
Wow.
happy to talk more about it and share more. So thank you for the
Yeah.
invitation that I had the opportunity to do that.
You're
Yeah.
welcome. You're welcome. We had Beulah Bubbles Livingston at our immersion this year. She came for a day. She says she's 94, no, or 96. She's getting up there. And
She is.
she talks very highly of you and very fondly of you as well.
Do you
So
know that it was her living room where I experienced my first constellation? So that
uh,
is really a full circle moment.
full circle,
Yeah.
exactly. That's beautiful. Yeah. So she
Yeah.
lives, yeah, she's been here, I think, for about 10 years now, maybe.
Mm.
Yeah. Beautiful woman.
Yeah, and I love and Bubbles is the perfect description for Bubbles. Beulah Levinson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I also feel very fondly. her and yeah, and that opportunity to experience the work for the first time.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. And if anyone's interested in getting in touch with Tanja, please reach out, have a look at Real Academy and see all the amazing offerings that Tanya's got. Her book, The Modern Path to Ancient Ways of Reclaiming Your Ancestors. Reclaiming Ancestors, yeah. Thank you so much. It's been amazing. Really, really enjoyed today.
Thanks for the conversation and also for sharing the book and the academy and all of that. It's wonderful to know that people are reading and learning and that the knowledge is going further. So I appreciate it.
Oh, well, it's wisdom keepers like yourself that, helping to share it. So we're really, really grateful. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Head over to Instagram and tell me what's resonated for you with this episode. You'll find me at tracy.cartwright. That's Tracy with no E, .cartwright. Or head over to my website, tracycartwright.co.nz, and receive a free audio with the gift from your ancestors. So until next time, be kind to yourself and have fun doing it.